My name is Kashish Bastola. I'm a junior studying history at Harvard College, and on behalf of the Harvard Undergraduate Nepali Student Association and the Institute of Politics, I would like to welcome the delegation from Nepal. Over the past few decades, Nepal has continued towards its promise of democracy.
Position he is holding for the third time. Nestled between India and China, and between the peaks and valleys of the majestic Himalayan mountains, Nepal is a rich cultural heritage nation with beauty. As it emerged from a devastating civil war just less than 20 years ago, the country is at a crossroads. With the shift to federalism, the country must navigate complex political, economic, and governance challenges against the backdrop of a warming planet. To communicate their message to the audience, all members of the audience are entitled to hear and see the speaker. Participants may ask questions during the Q&A period of the event and can protest in ways that a member of the Harvard community. We appreciate everyone's understanding and cooperation. Please join me now in welcoming Prime Minister Oli.
Thank you for your kind introduction. University Marshal Ms. Kathy Dale, esteemed faculties, staff and students, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste and good afternoon. I start by sharing how honored I feel to address John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at Harvard today. I extend my deepest appreciation to the President of the University for the generous invitation and excellent arrangements for this event. I feel singularly privileged to stand in this enormous temple of knowledge and wisdom. With all modesty, I stand here to share Nepal's perspective on transitional justice and climate change, climate justice. First, let me delve into the issue of transitional justice in Nepal. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, our country suffered a decade-long armed violence from 1996 to 2006, which resulted in around 17,000 deaths of Nepali people. But we have since come a long way from it, which started with the signing of a comprehensive peace accord between the rebels and the government in 2006. Following the accord, we first held an election to the Constituent Assembly in 2008 to write a new constitution. However, the disagreements in the Assembly resulted in its dissolution without adopting a new constitution. Even then, the new constitution in 2015 solidifying previous gains made in the field of restructuring. The constitution marks the culmination of our nation's struggles for democracy that started in the 1950s. The Constitution guarantees a competitive multi-party democracy. In a nutshell, our Constitution comprehensively addresses the underlying drivers and catalysts of conflict through substantial social, political, and economic reforms. This is a brief scenario of Nepal's peace process and political transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, transitional justice is an integral part of our peace process. Although transitional justice has remained on the back burner for several years, it was not forgotten. An attempt has been made to resolve this protracted issue of transitional justice. Back in 2015, we established two transitional justice mechanisms, namely Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and even settled some of them. But due to the frequent changes in the government, the issue of transitional justice was delayed for some 18 years after signing of the peace accord. Now, my government has been formed in a coalition of major two parties of Nepali politics, not only to give stability, but also to better deliver to Nepali people. These two political parties have a long history of leading the people for their freedom and prosperity. In this context, I am happy to share that immediately after the formation of my government, the Transitional Justice Bill was passed by the Parliament with near consensus. This time, my government is determined to conclude the issue of transitional justice once and for all. I want to assure you that the process of transitional justice will protect victims' rights and interests, including legal remedies. It will involve seeking truth, providing reparation, and bringing perpetrators of serious crimes to justice. No blanket amnesty will be given. Ladies and gentlemen, Nepal's peace process is nationally led and nationally owned unique process. Unique in the sense that all political parties from the left and right came together and concluded the peace accord. As we move to the last mile task of peace process, we welcome support and encouragement from the international community, including our partners in the process of effective implementation of the TJ Act. We are determined to conclude TJ process to heal the wounds and scars of the conflict period and help the entire society move forward with a sense of reconciliation, peace and harmony. In fact, Nepal is inherently a non-violent, tolerant and peaceful society, as it is the birthplace of Gautam Buddha and apostle of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me turn to the subject of climate justice. Our Mother Earth is in the Goldilocks zone in terms of Earth's distance to the Sun. As the right atmosphere and involved in the subsequent period, life came to existence on Earth. The making of this process took several billion years. Long story short, today we descendants of Homo sapiens rule the surface of the planet Earth. What we know now is that the last 200 years anthropogenic activities have been rendering irreparable damage to the natural ecosystem and atmosphere of our Mother Earth, thereby leading to the destruction of billions of years of evolution in no time. Axiomatically, it will invite the extinction of life on Earth. Now, the whole world is suffering, but the least developed countries are suffering the most as they do not have resources and technologies to manage adverse impacts of climate change. Moreover, while we have just started to make initial steps to economic development, the problem of global warming and climate change has come our way with increased incidence of disasters. It came to us from the outside world, far from our borders. The cumulative impact of hundreds of years of burning of fossil fuels have largely created these catastrophic problems. This is a gross injustice meted out by the advanced industrialized economies with their centuries of exploitation of nature and emissions of greenhouse gas that are largely responsible for the global economic harms, endangering our very existence. Against this fact, it is entirely rational to call for climate justice. And for us, climate justice is plain and simple. Those who pollute the environment have to pay proportionately. Developed countries and major economies must take up proportionate responsibility to support developing nations for climate actions through adequate resources and technology transfer. The major emitters must lead from the front in rehabilitating Mother Nature, reducing the reliance on fossil fuels. The establishment of a loss and damage fund in the recent UN Climate Change Conference was a positive step in recognizing the principle of climate justice, whereby those most responsible for emissions should cover the damages. Ladies and gentlemen, if we truly believe in democracy and justice at a global level, then wealthy nations who are responsible for climate damage must compensate for the loss and damage of essential infrastructures and livelihoods of people in vulnerable countries. The stakes are nothing less than our collective existence. The world cannot continue with the wrong model of carbon-intensive development. We must take appropriate, proportionate action to limit global warming and climate change, preserve nature, transition to greener economies, and embrace a sustainable path forward. We are in the same boat. If we don't work together to keep it afloat, we will sink together. Ladies and gentlemen, my country, Nepal, has set an ambitious goal of reaching net zero by 2045, 5 years ahead of the global target. Despite being one of the lowest emitters of greenhouse gases, Nepal is one of the most climate vulnerable countries. We have become a barometer of climate change. Nepal was hugely been contributing to the health of our planet through its forests, mountains, and rivers. Yet, despite these efforts, we continue to bear the brunt of climate change, created largely by the actions of industrialized nations. Our mountains play a crucial role in regulating the climate and ecosystem of oceans and mountains, with their snow-fed rivers flowing down to the oceans. Nepal's Himalayas, as a natural climate stabilizer, help maintain a cooling system in a region situated the hottest zone of the planet between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. But our Himalayas are losing their ice at an alarming rate, endangering the lives and livelihood of billions of people based on the river systems originated from the Himalayas. Neither the heat of the hottest region nor the ice of the cold places cause this destruction. it is humanity that has harmed nature, and in turn, nature is contributing to the climate crisis. Therefore, it is our responsibility to protect nature, and in doing so, we must preserve our mountains and forests. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by stating the obvious. The climate crisis is an unprecedented crisis that engulfs the entire planet. Therefore, it requires commitment, solidarity, and collective action on an unprecedented scale. Thank you for your attention. I would be happy to engage in an interactive discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Namaste. It's so good to see you, and welcome to Harvard. Welcome to the Kennedy School. Welcome to the Institute of Politics here at the historic JFK Forum. Michael, I'm really honored that we get to share the stage together, so thank you for this conversation. So what Michael and I thought we would do, with your permission, is we want to really focus on the two issues that you have raised on climate justice and transitional justice. And for those of you, it's an exciting time that we're having this conversation here about Nepal. Nepal really is at a crossroads, almost 20 years after the end of the Civil War and the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. And we really want to ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, to share your vision for how the country will get there. So first, maybe I'll start with climate change, and then Michael will focus on transitional justice. To start with climate change, in particular, you were just in New York yesterday. Thank you for coming from New York to Boston. Over 100,000 people were also with you in New York. Business people, activists, government officials, to all talk about Climate Action Week. You have been a very vocal voice in your country. You laid out very well in your speech for us today how vulnerable Nepal is. You're not an emitter, you're not a major emitter, but you stand at the crossroads of what industrialized nations have to offer in terms of the part that they really must play, particularly with things like the Loss and Damage Fund. There's been a lot of criticism, as you know, that industrialized countries led by the United States and China and 200 others have not done their part, though, to really pay into the fund and to help countries like Nepal. There's been many funds now set up to help countries like Nepal, but the money has not really started in a way that is meaningful. Is this approach working? Are we going to run out of time for the Himalayas, for mountain countries, especially with a mountain agenda of climate change? What would you say to all of our students here studying climate change, particularly for small countries that get trapped between the politics of industrialized nations on climate change? What would you like to share with our students today of what countries like Nepal need for this to really happen?
First of all, I would like to thank you very much, and I begin from the issue of climate change, climate issues. It is our legitimate demand that we are talking about who has committed mistakes, they have to correct, and to correct those things, they have to fund, they have to finance too. It is not us, because our country size is 148,000 square kilometers, just. Our population is 30 million, just. And our forest area is 46%, nearly half. And 70% is covered by the mountains. And third, more than 7%, 9% about rivers, lakes, etc. So you can understand how much we are contributing. Knowingly we are planting the forest and we are protecting the forest and we are contributing. And naturally we are contributing through the mountains and the rivers and the lakes and I mentioned before too, that our mountains, there are mountains in so many countries, and there are problems of mountainous countries and LDCs as well. But our situation is completely different than others. Because ice are what? When they collide with the mountains. Sure, this is a matter of very, very important. And meters thick layer of ice our mountains are holding. And our mountains are not holding just the ice, but the rocks of the mountains, they are just taking the water and dropping slowly, and the springs and fountains come out and they become rivers. To continue rivers. And the recharge system, water recharge system, that's very important. Otherwise, there will be no forest. If there are no mountains, there will be no forest. The cooling center of the world is mountain, between the Capricorn line and line of Cancer. So, we are talking that we have done nothing harm, but we have contributed. And we are asking today to the emitters of the greenhouse gases, etc., to support the countries who has no mistake, no guilty, but they are suffering from that.
So, Mr. Professor, you made a really compelling case here around why the Himalayas, the whole Indus River basin of South Asia, is really created and sourced here in the Himalayas, in Nepal. Obviously, we all know the news with what's happening with global warming, particularly in South Asia. It's probably happening at a rate that's greater than 1.5. Funds are not coming in at a rapid enough rate in order to have both adaptation effects and certainly not with mitigation. You made a pretty bold pledge both yesterday at the United Nations and then in your speech here today with us around Nepal being a zero emitter by 2045, which would be 5 years earlier than global commitments at 2050. Now, to connect back to the mountains and the rivers, Nepal also sits on some of the greatest sources of hydropower and green energy anywhere in the world. That has not really yet been fully invested, but there are lots of potential investment opportunities, as we know, underway to do this. The Millennium Challenge Compact, something that I worked on, as you know, is how we met before, is a potential area to build out the central transmission line, also to lure other private sector investors in. How do you see your future of hydropower, of green energy, and actually being an exporter of green power and green energy throughout the entire South Asia region, which on paper is possible, but it hasn't happened yet. So what is your vision for helping get that through?
There were regions. We started in South Asia electricity production some 113 years before in South Asia. We were second to start the hydropower electricity production, but we could not develop that. We have abundance of potential in the field of hydrogen, in the field of hydropower, and we are now giving demonstration those areas to produce hydropower and export it. But we want to diversify the market. Who will purchase our electricity? We don't want to rely on one country because we have seen. One is that why we are so confidently talking that within 2045 we can meet the target of 1.5 increment of this temperature and zero emission of carbon dioxide, etc. Because we have hydropower, we have forest, we have naturally we are very strong. And we are not contributing to destroy the nature. And we are not contributed to for the emission of carbon, etc. So we can confidently say, and we are in Kathmandu University, our students and our researchers, now we have told them to do some research or some research work so that they can, and they are able to produce green hydro electricity, green hydro power. So hydrogen power, not hydropower, hydrogen power. I went to Kathmandu University and I used that car run by the battery of green hydrogen gas. So we have so many options too. We can replace fossil fuels in use. So there are so many options. So we can. And if
Welcome you to Harvard. It is such an honor to be joining Fatima here with you to discuss these issues. So I would indeed love to talk to you about the issues of transitional justice that you spoke about so movingly in the speech. So just to underline the Prime Minister's points here, the Prime Minister successfully this past summer was able to create the historic bill that would move toward a transitional justice period, hoping to bring an end to this very difficult period going on since 2006 that brought the Civil War to an end, but there's been an ongoing concern for the lack of reconciliation, and the bill is an extraordinary move in that direction. So we're here at the Kennedy School, needless to say, many of our students have looked at other countries that have had to go through comparably difficult periods of transitional justice, and some of our students may indeed be involved in future work in this arena. We would love to hear your vision of how this will occur. So the law is extraordinary. Needless to say, the implementation will be at least as difficult, and there will be roadblocks, there will be difficulties, there will be places where the reconciliation will prove to be extremely difficult. What sorts of measures are you thinking about to help move this process along if, and I fear perhaps even when, those roadblocks are encountered?
in my opinion, we can get success if we honestly try or work or endeavor to achieve the goal. If we take one step, then we'll take another step and we'll get success. In this way, the question of transitional justice was looming since the last 18 years, and it was prolonged and prolonged for 18 years. But now,
Follow-up, building directly on the point you mentioned, I certainly agree that will be part of the power of this, is this will be a domestic move, hopefully not controlled by international powers. If I could ask a follow-up on that, however, Nepal, of course, is geographically surrounded by China and India. It has a very close relationship with the United States. Those three nations at times have had a conflicted relationship. And I understand your desire to avoid allowing the domestic policies of Nepal to be affected by that. Do you have a vision as to how that might be possible? Perhaps even how you would be able to negotiate that sometimes difficult triangular relationship?
we have two immediate neighbors. Immediate neighbors are two, and there is one another friendly neighbor. So we want support from our neighbors and friends. And initiatives, ideas, work and everything we'll do ourselves. And we need support because liberation issues are there. We have to provide the justice to the victims. They are suffering from since last 18 years, continuously. They are orphans, they are wounded people, they are disabled, and so many people. So we have to address their demands and we have to just address their issues. And that was in 1951. Rana oligarchy was toppled down and democracy was restored. That one. And again, king seized the power. Again, these two political parties led the struggle for 30 years and bring back the democracy. And again, there was violence. These two political parties took initiative to settle the violence, to bring the rebellions to the table of dialogue. And we are the political parties who led the situation from yesterday, 30 years before. Where was Nepal? You have been Nepal, not once, many times. You have seen the changes, the differences. You
One
have
of my favorite countries.
Yeah. And you have seen the roads, connectivity and other connectivities, etc. What we developed, and in the field of communication, in the field of other areas, education, health, etc. Before there were, the longevity of the people was 42 years about. Then now it's 72 years. I'm living my age. So, who doesn't believe these political parties and the government jointly formed by these two political parties seriously considering the situation of the country, the seriousness of the situation, and to relieve the country from the problems, and to resolve the problem of transitional justice, etc., and ending the situation of instability and etc. So, everybody, people believe on these two political parties. There is no other. But perhaps you open sometime mobile phone and go to the social media, etc. And that gives a different type of impression that, oh, there is. You must have seen that I am moving here, working here, I am organizing, I am participating different programs here without any disturbances and anything. But in media, particularly in social media, I was thrown by shoes, etc. I was beaten, I was attacked, like these propagandas were there. Was there any 0.00001% truth? No at all. Sure, these things are on surface, but there is established.
Thank you. It's great to see you here. So I am a Nepali. I am a dual degree candidate studying development economics here at Harvard and MBA at MIT. My name is Kailash. I actually first thought of asking a development-related climate just, but I want to ask you a very personal question. So about quarter of our GDP comes from remittance. In 15 to 20 years, the country is going to go from young population to aged population. We're focusing so much on infrastructure, right? But what is the point of all that infrastructure, all that money, if all the Nepalis would have left the country and the country is just aged people? So what are 2 to 3 industries you're focusing on, or what is your exact focus? Election is coming in a few years. What is your exact focus to make sure Nepalis feel they want to stay in Nepal for that Nepal you're building? Thank you.
Tell that Nepal is not a country of old age people. Nepal is a country of 60% at least working people and 42% young population, youth. Until now, how many percent, what is the percentage of youths going outside, not only youths and others? Entire Nepali, how many Nepalis are there? There are 10-12%. And 42% young population we have. It doesn't mean that I'm supporting to go outside to the youth. we are trying to contain our youth inside the country and trying to make them happy, provide them job opportunity, inspiring them for entrepreneurship and new entrepreneurship and startup, etc. We are inspiring them too. And we are providing support from the government to doing so many things. But we have to understand that countries do not move ahead at the straight line. And at the same line where one country moved, another country also moves at the same line. That's not the case. And for some time, our people, most of our people who are going outside for 3 years with work permission, and after 3 years they are coming back. And media says that 4,000 people per day are going out, and 4,000 people per day coming in. They don't talk about. They are not only going out, because all the countries, no country permits for always for war. They permit for 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, not for always. So they come back. They have to come back, and they are coming back as well. So there are some sentimental statements and opinions, etc. It's not positive, and our economy should not be rely on remittances. Our economy should be rely on our own production. We are emphasizing on those production areas so that we can be self-reliant and we can bring our trade and balance, and we can export our production and make the country deficit. What's loss? You came here, you studied, and you go back to the country to provide well-educated service. Skilled one. Thank you.
Transitional justice in Nepal. I still remember in 2015 when I was just in school and when the Constitution Day was implemented, there were widespread protests all around the country. A lot of people had to sacrifice their lives because they felt that the Constitution did not respect indigenous autonomy or regional aspirations for different groups. Now that we're trying to amend the Constitution, make it more acceptable for a wider section of the population, I'm curious why you think so many people sacrifice their lives for the Constitution that we laud so much today, and if publishing the Lal Commission, Lal Ayog report, which investigated the unjust use of police force during this protest, whether publishing that report is a step towards transitional justice or a more peaceful country in the future. Thank you.
Promulgation of the Constitution of new Constitution, the Constitution of interest to distract was the essence of the achievements of our sacrifices. Issue what we raised about the amendment of Constitution. There may be something was like a hot pot at that time, and everybody, whether understands or not, but was expert on the issue of Constitution. And say, this point must be included in the Constitution. And no one can convince him or her. That was the situation. In such a situation, we had to compromise to promulgate the Constitution. Regression. It is for progress. Because, as I mentioned before that, we two political parties, Nepali Congress and UML, are in the government. We have formed the government, coalition government, who brought Nepal from the dark era of Rana Oligarchy to this democratic republic. And how we can go back? So, the question of amendment of the Constitution is not for going back or pulling back the country towards those old days.
Namaste, sir. It's an honor to have you here. I asked this question from a personal space as an international student in USA since past 3 years. I'm a graduate of master's degree from Kathmandu University, and currently I'm pursuing my master's degree in Harvard Graduate School of Education. My question to you is that why does Nepal passively accept the narration and tags that has been given to us by international organizations and others? And why do we never show concern in tags like third world country or poor country when we are much more than that? Or even showing concerns to neighboring countries' biggest Bollywood cinema, which has started to show us as the place for crime? Why do we never challenge these narrations, especially when we know that narrations like this has been shaping the perception around Nepalese and Nepal around the world? And I think a lot of students like me here can relate that ever since I've stepped into this country, we have been grappling against those stereotypes. So my question to you is, as a leader who has been leading this country and caring for its citizens, what would you do to step up and challenge this narration so that we Nepal and we Nepalese can truly stand and be known for the values that we truly hold and who we are authentically?
Namaste, Prime Minister. My name is Prasad and I'm from Bhutan, Nepal. I have thousands of questions for you, but I want to limit it to one for now. In the past 15 years, we have had 13 governments. That is about 14 months per government. That's very unstable. It seems like we are not even in embryonic stage of democracy, but a pseudo-democracy. This, I feel, is one of the fundamental issues of our institution. My main question is, what if there has been any preparation for introducing term limits in our constitution and stability of our government? And if not, why? Because this seems to be a burning issue of our time. Thank you.
Stereotypes of Nepal that are in global media, Bollywood industry here in the United States, and looking at also why Nepal does not push back on the narrative of donor aid, being a donor recipient, if I characterize that well, but how do you change, especially for the youth, you talked about your large youth population, how do you really give hope to the youth that they can see themselves as Nepalis, whether they're living in Nepal
September
or globally
27 मा हार्वर्ड युनिभर्सिटीको केनेडी अफ पोलिटिक्स इन्स्टिट्युसनमा भएको कार्यक्रममा केपी ओलीजी प्रधानमन्त्री केपी ओलीजीले कसरी हँसाउनु
No, term limits. Maybe our IOP colleagues can bring you back to debate some of our American politicians. But I think the student is asking, oftentimes what we do see in Nepal, especially in the prime ministership, the ministers, a lot of the political party leaders, they tend to be very similar faces. They tend to be of the same generation. Should you be considering term limits or other opportunities for new voices to also lead the country?
Yeah. You are a student of this university?
Now I'm doing research.
First, if some youth come here to join this university as a student, shouldn't apply for dean, president, or rector, or professor of the university. Must apply for an student. Some faculty, I think. Similarly, politics is not a joke. There is a sentiment that people say, why these old faces are being repeated again and again, and we have to see again and again these. Okay, there is competition. This is democratic system. In marathon, you cannot say me that old guy, stop here. I want golden cup, so you cannot run with me. If you run, then I cannot win. That's not justice. You have to run with me, and if you go ahead, you can get. So, that is not the question of age. And for politics, if somebody cannot work like a young man, shouldn't like a young man, and or woman, shouldn't just desire to remain in this post or capture this post. But if somebody can work, I would like to inform you that if you are talking about me, then I would like to tell you that 18 hours at least per day I'm working at. Still I'm working. So, and I have not created any bar for anybody to compete me and compete others also. In our country there is democracy. Inside my party there is democracy. Inside in the parliament there is democracy. Democratically people can. And in many countries young people are not giving candidacy also. In our country young people also are giving candidacy. But in many countries, I see young people are not even registering their candidacy. This is not the question of age. This is the question of working capability, working capacity, and physical and mental stage and strength. That depends on that. And our question was
On Nepal, how Nepalis are steeped.
Yeah. Stereotype of things are running in Nepal. That is the difference between the developed and undeveloped countries. Because, but I would like to tell you that we are also not so much backward, that we are far away, hundreds of miles back from the era. That's not true. The same mobile in America, in the UK, in Japan, in China, they use that. We do. The same about cars. But we use cheap cars because we have no that much money to buy. So according to thought, we have to take the more. Otherwise it may kill us. So we are doing our best to change the situation, to drive into a new stage, economically, politically, and we don't want to bring any instability. There must be a match between stability and progress in politics, in economy, and other areas as well, in society. So, this is my opinion.
Well, I know we have so many more questions, and I wish we had another hour to do this, but I know we are short on time with the Prime Minister. So I just wanted to say as we're wrapping up, and Michael, please, any closing thoughts on your end as well. I just wanted to tell you, Mr. Prime Minister, I think Michael and I will both share with you the Nepali Americans, the Nepali students we have seen here at Harvard, Greater Boston, represent such an opportunity for the country. For all of you that are studying Nepal, either because you're from there or you're passionate about the country, it's one of the world's youngest democracies. With that comes a lot of opportunity for hope, optimism, and really thinking through all the tools that you're learning here, whichever school or discipline that you're studying. How do you help connect and lay sound public policies for helping support the path forward as you have laid out today? I think, all of us that share a love for Nepal want nothing but the best for your country, for your people. I take a lot of my hope and optimism from the students, many of you here today, but all of your peers as well, all around the world, and of course back home in Nepal. They are the future of the country, and I think there's so much you can do to help Nepal leapfrog as you think through that next generation. So on my personal behalf, but also from the Kennedy School, Michael and all our colleagues, thank you for taking the time. You're so generous that you came up from New York. I know you haven't slept as you've made this journey. But thank you for sharing with us your own vision, but also listening to some of the students' points of view, which is so important as we think through what it means to be part of a democracy and what accountability looks like. So thank you for modeling that with us today.
Thank you. The university and energetic students who asked so many questions from different angles. I'd like to thank them. And I would like to thank the Nepali students who are studying here, and they will get knowledge. They will earn knowledge from here and they will back, I believe, in their country, and they will serve. Also I would like to wish all the best to all the students of this university, and as well as the professors and management. Everybody, I would like to thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much.